Commander Taman stood in the vast chamber of the Galactic Council station, watching the alien delegates gather around the circular platform. The chamber was enormous, with walls that seemed to stretch into infinity. Hundreds of different species filled the seats, their bodies ranging from insect-like creatures to beings made of pure energy. The air hummed with translation devices, turning thousands of alien languages into something his ears could understand. Taman adjusted his uniform and glanced at his crew standing beside him. Jiwoo, his pilot, stood with her arms crossed, her face calm despite the situation. Hana, the xenobiologist, was studying the aliens with obvious fascination. Dong-hyun, the engineer, looked uncomfortable in the formal setting. So-hyun, the medical officer, kept her expression neutral. Myung, their agricultural specialist, seemed excited rather than nervous. They were the first human delegation to receive a colony assignment from the Council. Earth had joined the galactic community only 2 years ago, and the other species were still deciding what they thought of humanity. Some were curious, others were dismissive. Most seemed to think humans were just another primitive species that would fade into obscurity. A tall, crystalline being stepped forward. Its body reflected light in strange patterns as it spoke. "We have reviewed humanity's request for a colony world. The Council has reached a decision." The chamber fell silent. Taman felt his heart beat faster. A colony world would give humanity a real place in the galaxy. It would prove they belonged here. "The Council assigns humanity the planet designated Vareth 9, the crystalline being announced. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Taman noticed several aliens turning to each other, their expressions ranging from surprise to amusement. He didn't understand why. A creature that looked like a giant mantis clicked its mandibles together, producing sounds that the translator converted to laughter. "Vareth 9? The Class 0 world? Are we really doing this?" Another delegate, a being covered in purple scales, leaned forward. "The Council is generous today, giving them a planet that kills everything that lands on it." 47 attempts, someone else said. 47 colonies failed on that world. Some species lasted 3 months. Others barely made it 3 weeks. The crystalline being raised one of its limbs, calling for silence. "The planet Vareth 9 is available for colonization. Humanity requested a world. We have provided one. Whether they succeed or fail is their concern." Taemin stepped forward. "Excuse me, but what exactly makes this planet so difficult?" The mantis-like creature made that clicking sound again. "What doesn't make it difficult?" "The gravity will crush your bones. The atmosphere will poison your lungs. The weather changes from freezing to boiling every day. The wildlife considers everything food. Even the plants are deadly." "It's rated Class 0, the purple-scaled delegate added. "The lowest possible rating. It means the planet is actively hostile to life. Most species consider it impossible to colonize. And yet you're offering it to us?" Jiwoo asked, her voice sharp. "You wanted a colony world," the crystalline being said simply. "This is what's available. Take it or wait another 50 years for something else to open up." Taman looked at his crew. They had prepared for this moment for months. Earth needed this. Humanity needed to prove they could survive out here among the stars. "How long do you think they'll last?" one alien whispered to another. The translation device picked it up anyway. "I give them a month," someone replied, "too generous. 2 weeks maximum. Want to bet on it?" Laughter spread through parts of the chamber. Taman felt his jaw tighten. They were treating this like a joke. Like human lives were entertainment. Hana touched his arm gently. "We can do this," she said quietly. "We've survived worse, had they?" Earth had its challenges, but this planet sounded like a nightmare. Still, backing down now would confirm everything these aliens thought about humanity. That they were weak. That they didn't belong. "We accept," Taman said loudly. "We'll take Vareth 9. The chamber erupted in noise. Some aliens seemed shocked. Others appeared amused. A few looked almost disappointed, as if they'd hoped humanity would refuse. The crystalline being tilted its body, which Taman had learned was their version of a nod. "Very well. You have 6 months to establish a functional colony. If you fail, the planet will be marked as permanently uninhabitable, and humanity will have to wait for another opportunity." 6 months is plenty," Taman replied, with more confidence than he felt. As the meeting ended, the human crew made their way through the station's corridors. Aliens stared at them as they passed. Some pointed. Others laughed openly. "Did you hear? They took Vareth 9. The Deathworld? They must be insane." Or stupid. I give them 3 weeks before they're begging to leave. Jiwoo's hands curled into fists, but she kept walking. They all did. Let them laugh. Let them make their bets. Words didn't matter. Results did. They reached their ship, a sturdy vessel Earth had built specifically for colony missions. It wasn't pretty or advanced by galactic standards, but it was reliable. That's what mattered. Inside, Dong-hyun pulled up the data files the Council had provided about Verath 9. The crew gathered around the screen, studying their new home. The planet looked dark from space, covered in swirling storm clouds. The data confirmed everything the aliens had said. High gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme temperature variations, dangerous fauna, hostile flora. Every measurement was painted red, indicating severe danger. This is what we're working with, Dong-hyun said, scrolling through the information. Previous colonization attempts include the Yilren, the Korthan, the Celtrics. Pretty much every major species has tried and failed. Why did they all fail? So-hyun asked. Hana read through the reports. Different reasons. The Yilren couldn't handle the gravity. The Korthan's biology couldn't process the atmospheric composition. The Celtrics lost too many colonists to predators. Some just gave up when conditions got too hard. They gave up, Myung repeated thoughtfully. That's interesting. What do you mean? Taemin asked. Myung shrugged. They all quit. Sure, they had reasons, but they quit. Humans were not great at quitting. Earth's gravity is 1 g, Dong-hyun noted. Verath 9 is 1.8 g. That's going to be rough. Earth's atmosphere wasn't always breathable either, Hana pointed out. Life changed it. Maybe we can too. Jiwoo ran her fingers over the navigation console. The approach looks tricky. Those storms are constant, but I've flown through worse, have you? So-hyun asked skeptically. Well, no, Jiwoo admitted. But I will. Taemin looked at each of them. They were scared. He could see it. But they weren't backing down. That was the thing about humans. Fear didn't stop them. It just made them prepare harder. We have a long journey ahead, he said. Use the time to prepare. Study everything about this planet. Find its weaknesses. Find ways we can adapt. The Council expects us to fail. Let's prove them wrong. As the ship departed the station, Taemin watched the aliens through the viewport. They were still laughing, still making their jokes. Some were actually placing bets on how quickly the humans would die. Let them laugh now. They wouldn't be laughing for long. The ship turned toward deep space, toward Verath 9, toward what everyone else called impossible. The crew got to work immediately. Each one focused on their specialty, turning problems into puzzles, obstacles into challenges. Behind them, the Galactic Council station grew smaller. Ahead, somewhere in the darkness, waited their future, a Class 0 Deathworld that 47 other species had failed to conquer. The 48th attempt was about to begin, and this time humans were involved. The journey to Verath 9 took 3 weeks. During that time, the crew studied every piece of data they had about the planet. They ran simulations. They trained in the ship's high-gravity chamber. They prepared as much as anyone could prepare for a world designed to kill them. Nothing prepared them for the reality. Beginning approach, Jiwoo announced, gripping the controls tighter than usual. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Through the viewport, Verath 9 looked angry. Dark clouds swirled across its surface in violent patterns. Lightning flashed constantly, illuminating the chaos below. The ship shook as they entered the outer atmosphere. Atmospheric readings are all over the place, Dong-hyun called out, watching his instruments. Electromagnetic interference is worse than the data suggested. The ship lurched sideways. Jiwoo fought with the controls, trying to keep them steady. I can't get a clean flight path. The storms are pushing us around. Can we make it? Taemin asked, strapping himself in tighter. Ask me again in 5 minutes, Jiwoo replied through gritted teeth. The ship dropped suddenly, falling through an air pocket. Alarms blared. Everything not secured went flying. So-hyun grabbed a loose medical kit before it could hit anyone. Gravity's pulling harder than expected, Jiwoo said. Adjusting thrust, they plunged deeper into the atmosphere. The ship's hull screamed as wind tore at it. Temperature sensors jumped wildly. Outside, the world was a blur of dark clouds and flashing lightning. Landing site ahead, Dong-hyun announced. 2 kilometers. I see it, Jiwoo said. Her hands moved across the controls with desperate precision. Hold on! The ship hit the ground hard. Everyone lurched forward against their restraints. Metal groaned. Something in the back compartment shattered. Then finally silence except for the howling wind outside. Everyone okay? Taemin asked, releasing his harness. They checked each other quickly. Bruises, but nothing broken. Lucky. That was the worst landing I've ever done, Jiwoo said, still shaking slightly. But you did it, Hana said. We're alive. We're here. Taemin moved to the viewport. Through the reinforced glass he could see their new home. The landscape was harsh and rocky, with jagged formations jutting up like broken teeth. The sky was a sickly green color and the air looked thick, almost oily. Nothing moved except the constant wind. Atmospheric analysis, he ordered. Dong-hyun checked his readings. Nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, but also sulfur compounds, trace metals in aerosol form, and something else I can't identify. The oxygen level is breathable, but the other compounds are toxic. We'll need filters constantly. Temperature? So-hyun asked. Currently minus 30 degrees Celsius. But according to the data, it'll hit 60 degrees by midday. That's a 90-degree swing, Myung said, stunned. In one day? Welcome to paradise, Jiwoo muttered. They spent the first hour setting up basic life support inside the ship. The plan was to use it as their primary shelter while they built something more permanent. But even inside, they could feel the difference. Everything felt heavier. Walking required more effort. Lifting supplies that would have been easy on Earth now strained their muscles. The gravity is really 1.8 G, So-hyun said, sitting down heavily. I thought we'd adjust quickly, but this is exhausting. We'll adapt, Taemin said. Humans always do. For now, take breaks. Don't push too hard. As day turned to what passed for night on Vareth 9, the temperature plummeted. Frost formed on the ship's exterior within minutes. They gathered in the common area, eating rations and reviewing their plans. Tomorrow we start surveying the area, Taemin said. We need to find water, identify resources, and understand the local threats. A sound outside made them all freeze. It was a howl, but wrong somehow. Too deep, too long. It echoed across the rocky plains, making the ship's walls vibrate. What was that? Myung whispered. Hana moved to the sensors. Something large. Very large. About 300 meters away. They watched the motion detectors. Multiple signatures appeared circling the ship. The creatures moved with coordinated precision like pack hunters. Are we safe in here? So-hyun asked. The hull should hold, Dong-hyun said. Should. The howling continued through the night. None of them slept well. Morning brought light but not comfort. The temperature rose rapidly as a bloated red sun climbed into the green sky. Within 2 hours it was above freezing. By noon the heat was oppressive. Taemin led the first survey team outside. They wore environmental suits with filters and temperature regulation. Even so, the gravity made every step a challenge. The air smelled wrong through the filters, sharp and metallic. The landscape was even more hostile up close. The rocks were sharp, almost blade-like. Strange vegetation grew in patches, purple and black plants with thorns as long as fingers. Nothing looked safe to touch. Soil sample, Myung said, kneeling carefully. He collected dirt in a sealed container. It's got a weird texture. Lot of minerals, probably toxic. Hana was examining the plants with a scanner. These are fascinating. They've adapted to the temperature extremes by going dormant during the cold and metabolizing rapidly in the heat. But they're also releasing spores. Scanning their composition now. Spores? So-hyun asked sharply. What kind? Unknown. But our filters should catch them. I hope. They moved deeper into the area, mapping the terrain. Dong-hyun found what might be a water source, though the liquid looked more gray than clear. We'll need to test this extensively before anyone drinks it, he said. A screech from above made them all look up. Something flew through the green sky, massive wings spanning at least 15 meters. Its body was armored with what looked like metallic scales. As they watched, it dove down, snatching something from the rocks and flew away. The fauna here evolved for warfare, Hana said quietly. Everything's predator or prey. There's no middle ground. That night the creatures returned. More of them this time. They tested the ship's perimeter, scratching at the hull with claws that left deep gouges. Dong-hyun rigged up some basic alarms, but they were running low on power for non-essential systems. We can't stay in the ship forever, Jiwoo said. We need to build a proper base. In this? Myung gestured outside where shapes moved in the darkness. We'd be torn apart. Then we need defenses, Taemin said. Real ones. Dong-hyun, what can you build with what we have? The engineer thought for a moment. I can rig up some electric fencing, maybe motion-activated lights. But it'll drain our power fast. We need a better energy source. The planet's got constant storms, Jiwoo pointed out. Could we harvest the lightning? Dong-hyun's eyes widened. Actually, it may be. It's dangerous, but the energy output would be massive. I'd need to build collectors, design a safe storage system. Do it, Taemin ordered. Whatever you need. Days blurred together into a desperate routine. Survey, build, defend, survive. The creatures attacked every night. The crew took turns on watch, fighting exhaustion and the constant weight of the heavy gravity. So-hyun treated injuries daily. Cuts from the sharp rocks. Burns from touching the wrong plants. Muscle strains from the gravity. One night, Myung's filter clogged and he inhaled some of the spores. He spent 2 days fevered and hallucinating before So-hyun found a treatment. We're losing this fight, Jiwoo said quietly to Taemin one evening. Slowly but surely. No, Taemin replied. We're learning. Every problem teaches us something. Every failure shows us what not to do. And what happens when we run out of chances to learn? He didn't have an answer for that. On the 15th day, Dong-hyun finished the lightning collectors. They were crude, barely more than metal rods connected to the ship's power systems, but when the next storm rolled through, they worked. Energy poured into their batteries more than they could possibly use. It's working, Dong-hyun shouted over the thunder. We've got power. With power came possibilities. They built better defenses, stronger lights, an electric fence that actually worked. That night, when the creatures came, they hit the fence and fled, howling in pain and confusion. For the first time since landing, the crew slept through the night. In the morning, Taemin sent their first report to the Galactic Council. He kept it simple. Colony established. Operations beginning. We'll report again in 30 days. He didn't mention the attacks, the injuries, the near failures. He just stated facts. They were here. They were alive. They were staying. In the council station, observers read the report with surprise. 37 different alien species had bet on humanity failing within 2 weeks. They'd all lost their wagers. They're still alive? One delegate said, shocked. Apparently, another replied, though I give them another week maximum. But on Varath 9, the human crew wasn't thinking about limits or maximums. They were thinking about tomorrow, about problems to solve, about a hostile world that was slowly, painfully becoming home. 3 months on Varath 9 had changed them all. Their bodies had adapted to the heavy gravity, building muscle and bone density. Their minds had adjusted to the constant danger. What had seemed impossible at first now felt merely difficult. That was progress. Myung stood in what they'd started, calling the garden, though it looked nothing like any, garden on Earth. The purple and black plants native to Varath 9 grew alongside experimental crops from home. Most of the Earth plants had died within days, but some surprisingly had survived. Look at this, Myung said to Hana, pointing at a tomato plant. It was twisted and dark, barely recognizable, but alive. It shouldn't work. The soil is toxic. The temperature swings should kill it, but it's adapting. Hana scanned the plant with her equipment. It's not just adapting, it's thriving. Look at the root system. It's processing the toxic minerals and converting them into nutrients. The plant evolved in weeks what should take thousands of years. Earth plants are tough, Myung said with pride. They've survived everything our world threw at them. Ice ages, droughts, floods. This is just another challenge. He'd been experimenting with gene modifications using the ship's limited equipment. Some attempts failed spectacularly. Others showed promise. The key was understanding what Varath 9 offered rather than trying to force Earth solutions onto an alien world. The native plants go dormant in the cold, Myung explained, pulling up his notes. But what if we crossbred them with Earth crops that are cold-resistant? Take the best of both worlds? That would take years of research, Hana pointed out. Or weeks if we're desperate enough. Myung grinned. Desperation makes for good science. Meanwhile, Dong-hyun had become obsessed with understanding the planet's systems. The electromagnetic storms that had nearly killed them during landing now powered their entire operation. But he wanted more. The storms follow patterns, he explained to Taemin, showing charts filled with data. They're not random. They're generated by the planet's magnetic field interacting with the solar wind. If we map the patterns, we can predict them. Use them. Use them how? Taemin asked. Dong-hyun pulled up a holographic display of the surrounding area. Right now, those storms are our biggest defense. Nothing can fly through them. Nothing can approach from above. If we build in the storm zones, we're protected, and we have unlimited power, but we'd also be constantly hammered by lightning. Not if we channel it properly. The native rock formations act as natural lightning rods. We build around them, not against them. Let the planet's rage flow past us instead of through us. It was a radical idea. Instead of fighting the planet, work with it. Use its hostility as a tool. The crew began construction on an underground facility. The surface would always be dangerous, but beneath the rocky ground they could create something stable. Dong-hyun designed a network of tunnels that used the geothermal heat for temperature control. Natural, efficient, brilliant. Hana made her own breakthrough with the native wildlife. The pack hunters that had terrorized them during the first weeks were called ravagers now. They were the size of large bears with 6 legs and jaws that could crush metal. Everyone had assumed they were mindless killers. Hana learned otherwise. They're intelligent, she reported during a crew meeting. Not sentient, but smart. They hunt in coordinated packs. They communicate. And they're curious. Curious enough to eat us, Ji-woo said darkly. Curious enough to learn, Hana corrected. Watch this. She showed them footage from the perimeter cameras. A ravager approached the electric fence, sniffed it, got shocked, and retreated. The next night, the same ravager approached but stopped before touching the fence. It had learned. More importantly, it taught the others. They're teaching each other to avoid our defenses, So-hyun said. That's terrifying. Or useful, Hana replied. Intelligence means they can be taught. Trained, maybe. You want to domesticate them? Taemin asked, unsure if she was joking. Why not? Humans domesticated wolves. These are just bigger wolves. With acid blood and more legs, it sounded insane. But everything they'd done here sounded insane at first. Hana started leaving food outside the fence. Not too close, but visible. The ravagers took it cautiously. She varied the locations, creating a pattern. Slowly, gradually, the creatures began to associate the human settlement with food rather than prey. It'll take time, Hana admitted. But animals respond to consistency. Give them a reason not to hunt us and eventually they won't. So-hyun had been dealing with medical challenges unlike anything she'd trained for. The spores that Myung inhaled during their first week had seemed like a disaster. But after treating him, she realized something important. The spores aren't just toxic, she explained to the crew. They're biologically active. They interact with cells, modify them. That's why they're dangerous. But it's also why they might be valuable. She'd been running experiments in her medical bay, testing the spores on tissue samples. The results were remarkable. The spores could accelerate healing, fight infections, even repair damaged nerves. In controlled doses, they were medicine. In large doses, they were poison. The difference was everything. The Galactic Council would pay a fortune for this, So-hyun said, showing Taemin her research. Several alien species have medical conditions these could treat. We're not just surviving on a death world. We're sitting on a pharmaceutical goldmine. Resources. That's what Vareth 9 was full of. Not the kind that were obvious, but the kind that required understanding. Adaptation. Vision. Ji-woo had been mapping the atmospheric corridors, the narrow paths through the storms where flight was possible. It was painstaking work, requiring dozens of test flights that nearly killed her multiple times, but gradually she built a complete map. Look, she showed the crew. These corridors are stable. They shift, but predictably. If you know the patterns, you can fly through them. And they're defensible. Any ship that doesn't know the safe paths will be torn apart by the storms. So we have a natural defense system, Taemin said, understanding immediately. And we control the only safe approach vectors. Exactly. This planet isn't just difficult to reach. It's impossible to attack, not without losing your entire fleet to the storms. 4 months after landing, they received a surprise visitor. A ship appeared in orbit, broadcasting Galactic Council credentials. It was an observation team sent to document the colony's inevitable failure. Instead, they found a thriving settlement. Underground facilities, agricultural zones, power systems that glowed with captured lightning, and humans who looked stronger, tougher, more capable than when they'd left. The lead observer was a Thanix named Rethkar, a species known for their arrogance and territorial nature. He materialized in the settlement via teleporter, flanked by 2 guards. So you're still alive, Rethkar said, looking around with obvious disappointment. I had bet against you. Sorry to cost you money, Taemin replied coolly. This facility is adequate, Rethkar continued, inspecting their work. For a temporary structure. You'll abandon it when winter comes, of course. This is winter, Myung said. Summer's actually worse. Rethkar's expression shifted to confusion, then suspicion. He walked through the settlement, examining everything with increasing disbelief. The gardens that shouldn't exist. The power systems that seemed to generate endless energy. The medical bay full of promising research. This is impossible, Rethkar finally said. 47 species have tried to colonize this world. All failed. 47 species quit, Hana corrected gently. We don't quit. That night, Rethkar tried to sabotage their operation. His guards attempted to damage the lightning collectors, probably hoping to strand the humans without power. They didn't account for the Ravagers. The creatures had been watching the settlement for months now, learning its rhythms, understanding its boundaries. When Rethkar's guards ventured outside the protected perimeter, the Ravagers attacked. Not to kill, interestingly, but to drive them back toward the human settlement, like sheepdogs herding livestock. Hana watched from the security feed, amazed. They're protecting us, she whispered. The guards fled back to their ship, leaving Rethkar behind. He was forced to wait until morning, spending an uncomfortable night in the human settlement while Ravagers prowled outside. Your planet is trying to kill me, Rethkar complained. Our planet is defending us, Taemin corrected. There's a difference. When Rethkar finally left, he filed a report with the council. But it wasn't the report anyone expected. Instead of documenting failure, he described success. Reluctantly, angrily, but accurately. The crew celebrated that night. They'd survived 4 months, proven themselves, built something real. What do you think the council will do now? Jiwoo asked. Probably send more observers, Taemin said. Maybe try to take credit for our success. Let them try, Myung said, looking out at the storm-racked landscape that was slowly, impossibly becoming home. This world is ours now, the others agreed. Varath 9 had tried to kill them. Instead, they'd learned its secrets, turned its weapons into tools, made allies of its monsters. The planet hadn't changed. They had, and that made all the difference. 1 year after landing, Varath 9 looked completely different. The original crew of 6 had grown to 500 colonists. Ships arrived weekly now, carrying people who'd heard about the impossible colony and wanted to be part of it. They brought families, children, hope. The underground city sprawled across 3 kilometers, a network of tunnels and chambers carved from the living rock. Donghyun's original designs had been expanded by new engineers, each adding innovations. The geothermal systems provided heating and cooling without any external power. Hydroponics bays grown from Myung's experimental crops fed everyone with surplus left over. Taemin stood in the central plaza, a vast cavern with a transparent ceiling that showed the storm-racked sky above. Lightning flashed constantly, beautiful and deadly, a reminder of where they lived. Children played in the plaza, laughing and running. They'd been born in the heavy gravity. To them, this was normal. They were stronger than Earth children, adapted from birth. Hard to believe, isn't it? Jiwoo said, walking up beside him. She'd been promoted to flight commander, overseeing all atmospheric operations. A year ago, we were hiding in the ship, terrified of every sound. We learned, Taemin said simply. We did more than learn. We conquered. Above them, ships came and went through the atmospheric corridors Jiwoo had mapped. She'd trained 50 new pilots in the techniques required to fly through Varath 9 storms. It had become a prestigious assignment. Pilots who could navigate here could fly anywhere. The training program was attracting students from across the galaxy. We've got 12 alien species requesting permission to send their pilots for training, Jiwoo reported. The council is calling it the Varath Flight Academy. They're charging everyone but us hefty fees for access. Of course they are, Taemin said with amusement. Let them profit. As long as we control the actual training. Myung's agricultural achievements had spread even faster. The hybrid crops he'd developed grew in conditions that killed everything else. Toxic soil? The plants processed it. Extreme temperatures? They adapted. Dangerous atmosphere? They filtered it naturally. His research station had become a hub for xenobotanists from 20 different species. They came to study how Earth plants could modify themselves so rapidly, how they turned poisons into nutrients, how they thrived in hell. It's the evolutionary pressure, Myung explained to a group of visiting scientists. Earth plants survived 5 mass extinctions. They evolved to be flexible, adaptable. You show them poison, they learn to eat it. You show them extreme heat, they learn to use it. That's not special. That's just Earth. The scientists looked at him like he was describing magic. Their own plants, they explained, were highly specialized. Perfect for their native environments, but incapable of adapting to change. Earth plants were different. Earth life was different. Your whole planet is a pressure cooker for evolution, one scientist said in awe. Everything there learns to survive or dies. No wonder you people are so stubborn. Myung took that as a compliment. The food surplus had turned into an export business. For Earth-grown crops were expensive but valued across the galaxy. They could grow anywhere. Even on marginal worlds other species had written off. Colony worlds that struggled with agriculture now bought seeds from Varath 9. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The planet nobody wanted had become essential to galactic food security. Hana's work with the Ravagers had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. The creatures weren't just tolerant of humans anymore. They were protective, bonded. She walked through the settlement's outer perimeter with 3 Ravagers following her like enormous, deadly dogs. They'd learned to respond to commands, to distinguish friend from threat, to coordinate their hunts with human needs. They're pack animals, Hana explained to new arrivals who stared in terror at the creatures. They just needed a pack to belong to. We became that pack. Other alien species watched footage of humans casually walking beside apex predators and questioned their reality. The Ravagers had killed hundreds of colonists from other species. They destroyed entire settlements. And now they were pets? Not pets, Hana corrected firmly. Partners. We respect them. We don't own them. The Ravagers had become Varath 9's guardians. They patrolled the perimeter, warned of approaching storms, and hunted the even more dangerous predators that sometimes emerged from the deep wilderness. Several had bonded specifically with individual humans, forming relationships that would last their lifetimes. When a Thanix merchant ship tried to land without permission, attempting to steal mineral samples, the Ravagers responded before any human security could. They surrounded the ship, preventing anyone from leaving until official authorities arrived. The Thanix never tried again. So-hyun's medical research had attracted the most attention from the Galactic Council. The compounds derived from Varath 9's toxic spores had proven effective against diseases that plagued multiple species, neurological disorders, cellular degradation, even certain cancers. Her research facility employed 200 people now, a mix of human doctors and alien medical researchers. They'd published 17 papers in the last 6 months. 3 pharmaceutical companies had offered to buy her research. She'd refused all of them. This belongs to Varath 9, she insisted. We'll license it fairly, but we're not selling out. The wealth generated by medical patents alone could fund the colony for decades. But So-hyun was more interested in the research itself. Every day revealed new properties, new applications. The planet that tried to poison them had given them the tools to heal the galaxy. Dong-hyun had become famous for his engineering solutions. Other colonies facing harsh environments now consulted him. How do you build in extreme gravity? How do you capture storm energy? How do you turn environmental hazards into advantages? His answer was always the same. Stop fighting the planet. Work with it. He designed power systems for 12 other worlds, each customized to that planet's specific conditions. The fees he charged went back into Varath 9's infrastructure. New facilities, better equipment, expanded living quarters. The underground city now had parks, schools, entertainment centers. It had everything a colony needed to be permanent. People weren't just surviving here. They were living. When the Galactic Council announced an official inspection for reclassification, Taemin wasn't surprised. They'd been too successful for too long. The Council couldn't ignore them anymore. The inspection team arrived on a massive vessel, carrying representatives from 50 different species. Leading them was Counselor Vreth, one of the crystalline beings who'd first assigned them to Varath 9. He was the one who'd laughed, who'd made jokes about how quickly humans would fail. He wasn't laughing now. Vreth materialized in the central plaza, surrounded by his delegation. They stared at the thriving settlement in silence, at the children playing, at the ships coming and going through the storms, at the Ravagers walking calmly alongside human handlers. "This is impossible," Vreth finally said. "That's what everyone keeps telling us," Taemin replied. "Yet here we are." The inspection took 3 days. The delegation examined everything: agricultural systems, power generation, medical research, population density, economic output. Every measurement, every metric, every detail. They visited the surface protected by environmental suits and watched as a massive storm rolled across the plains. Lightning struck the collection towers in brilliant cascades. Power flooded into the city's systems more than they could possibly use. The excess was stored, sold, or simply channeled into the ground. "You're using the planet's own hostility as infrastructure," one inspector said, stunned. "It's brilliant. It's necessary," Donghyun replied. "You can't fight a planet. It always wins. So you make it your ally instead." They toured the agricultural zones where Myung's crops grew in regimented rows. Alien botanists took samples, ran analyses, and shook their heads in disbelief. "These plants shouldn't exist," one said. "They're Earth plants," Myung said proudly. "Earth doesn't care what should or shouldn't exist. It cares what survives." In the medical facility, So-hyun demonstrated treatments derived from the toxic spores. She showed before and after scans of patients with terminal illnesses who were now healthy. She presented research data that had been peer-reviewed across the galaxy. "You've turned the planet's weapons into medicine," an inspector observed. "We've turned them into what they always were," So-hyun corrected. "Tools. Everything's a tool if you know how to use it." The delegation watched Jiwoo train a class of new pilots in atmospheric flight. They observed as students from 6 different species learned to navigate the storm corridors, to read the electromagnetic patterns, to dance between death and safety. "This is the most advanced flight training facility in the galaxy," Vreth admitted grudgingly. "Ships that train here never crash. Not anywhere." On the final day, Vreth requested a private meeting with Taemin. They stood in the plaza, watching colonists go about their daily lives. Normal lives. Happy lives. On a planet that was supposed to be impossible. "I owe you an apology," Vreth said quietly. "When the Council assigned you to Vareth 9, we expected you to fail. We wanted you to fail, to be honest. Humanity was new, unproven. We didn't think you deserved a place among us." "I know," Taemin said. "You've proven us wrong in every possible way. This colony shouldn't exist." The Galactic Council chamber was packed. Representatives from every member species had gathered for what was being called the most significant reclassification hearing in a century. Holographic displays showed real-time data from Vareth 9. Population numbers. Economic output. Survival rates. Every metric was highlighted in green. Success. Undeniable success. Taemin stood at the center platform again, just like he had 2 years ago. But everything was different now. Then, he'd been a hopeful commander accepting an impossible assignment. Now he represented a thriving colony that had accomplished what 47 other species couldn't. Counselor Vreth called the session to order. His crystalline form reflected the chamber's lights in patterns that seemed almost cheerful. "We are gathered to review the classification of planet Vareth 9, currently rated as Class 0. Commander Taemin of the human colony will present his findings." Taemin activated his presentation. Images of Vareth 9 filled the chamber. Not the dark, storm-racked nightmare from 2 years ago, though that was shown too, but also images of the city, the farms, the children, the life. "When humanity accepted Vareth 9 as our colony world," Taemin began, "everyone expected us to fail. The planet was rated Class 0, the lowest possible habitability score, hostile gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme weather, dangerous fauna. Everything about it was designed to kill colonists." He paused, letting the images speak. "But we didn't see a death world. We saw a challenge, an opportunity. We saw a planet that was harsh, yes, but also rich in resources if we could learn to access them." The presentation showed early footage. The terrible landing. The first attacks from Ravagers. The crew huddled in their ship, exhausted and afraid. Several alien delegates shifted uncomfortably. They'd bet on those people dying. "The first month was the hardest," Taemin continued. "We lost equipment. We suffered injuries. We made mistakes, but we learned from every failure. And slowly we stopped fighting the planet and started understanding it." New images appeared. Donghyun's lightning collectors. The first successful harvest from Myung's hybrid crops. Hana feeding ravagers through the fence. Each innovation highlighted, Earth is a harsh planet by galactic standards, Taemin explained. It's given us ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, mass extinctions. Life there doesn't survive by being perfect. It survives by being adaptable. That's what we brought to Vareth 9. Not superior technology, not advanced weapons, just adaptability. He showed the current colony statistics. 500 permanent residents, 0 fatalities in the last 8 months, agricultural surplus feeding 3 other colony worlds, medical research benefiting 17 species, economic output exceeding any Class 3 world. Vareth 9 is no longer a Class 0 world, Taemin stated firmly. It's a thriving colony that supports hundreds of people. It exports valuable crops, provides critical medical research, and trains pilots from across the galaxy. By every standard measure, it's highly habitable. A delegate from the Yilran stood up. They were one of the first species to attempt colonizing Vareth 9. They'd lasted 3 weeks before fleeing. The planet's conditions haven't changed. The gravity is still 1.8 g. The storms still rage. How can you claim it's habitable when it killed so many of our people? Because habitability isn't absolute, Taemin replied. It's relative. What's deadly to one species might be manageable to another. The Yilran evolved in 0.6 g. Of course, 1.8 g crushed you. But humans evolved in 1 g. We can adapt to 1.8 g with time and training. It's difficult but not impossible. Hana stepped forward, taking over the presentation. Every species sees the galaxy through their own evolutionary lens. The Yilran need low gravity. The Korthan need specific atmospheric compounds. The Celtrics require certain electromagnetic frequencies. When those needs aren't met, they call a planet uninhabitable. She brought up Earth's data. But look at our homeworld. Earth has extreme gravity variance by latitude. Temperature ranges from -90 to +70 Celsius. Atmospheric oxygen levels have fluctuated dramatically throughout history. Life there adapted to all of it. Humans are the product of a planet that constantly changes, so we're built to handle change. Myung took over next, discussing the agricultural developments. He showed time-lapse footage of Earth crops adapting to Vareth 9's soil. Life finds a way. That's not just a saying, it's biology. Given the right conditions and enough pressure, organisms evolve. We just accelerated that process. His presentation included data that shocked many delegates. Vareth 9 crops were now being grown on 14 different worlds, including some previously considered too marginal for agriculture. The hybrid plants didn't just survive difficult conditions, they improved them, processing toxins and enriching soil. Vareth 9 isn't a death world, Myung concluded. It's a genetic laboratory. The extreme conditions forced rapid adaptation. The plants that survived are now the toughest, most versatile crops in the galaxy. So-hyun presented the medical research, treatments for neurological diseases, cancer therapies, regenerative medicines, all derived from the toxic spores that had nearly killed them during the first weeks. Poison and medicine are the same thing in different doses, So-hyun explained. Vareth 9's spores are deadly in large quantities, but in controlled amounts they're revolutionary. We've already distributed treatments to 57 worlds, thousands of lives saved by compounds from a planet everyone called worthless. The economic data was the most convincing. Dong-hyun showed revenue streams from power system designs, architectural consultations, and technology licensing. The colony wasn't just self-sufficient. It was profitable. They were paying taxes to the Galactic Council, funding infrastructure across multiple systems. Vareth 9 generates more economic activity than any 3 Class 3 worlds combined, Dong-hyun stated. Our power systems are being installed on mining colonies, research stations, and frontier worlds. The designs we developed here are changing how species approach hostile environments everywhere. Ji-woo presented last, discussing the Flight Academy. We train 200 pilots annually. Every species that sent students here has seen their crash rates drop by 60%. Vareth 9 teaches pilots to handle the unexpected, to adapt to changing conditions, to survive when systems fail. Those are universal skills. When the human delegation finished, the chamber fell silent. The data was overwhelming, undeniable. Vareth 9 was many things, but uninhabitable wasn't one of them. Not anymore. Not for humans. Councillor Vreth stood to address the assembly. The council must now decide on reclassification. I propose we open the floor for discussion. Debate erupted immediately. Some delegates argued for Class 5. the standard rating for habitable worlds. Others suggested Class 7, reserved for highly desirable colony locations. A few insisted on maintaining the Class 0 rating with special annotations for human compatibility. The mantis-like delegate who'd mocked humanity 2 years ago stood up. "I was wrong," he said simply. I laughed at the humans. I bet they'd die within weeks. Instead, they've built something remarkable. I propose Class 7 rating, with a formal apology from this council for our initial dismissal. Agreement rippled through the chamber. Not universal, but significant. Species that had doubted humanity were reconsidering. The evidence was impossible to ignore. A Corthan delegate raised a concern. If we reclassify Vareth 9 as highly habitable, what does that say about the 47 failed attempts by other species? Are we admitting we're inferior to humans? Vreth responded carefully. We're admitting that habitability is species-dependent. The Corthan breathe methane. Earth's atmosphere would kill you instantly. Does that make Earth a death world? No. It makes it incompatible with Corthan biology. The same is true of Vareth 9. It's incompatible with most species. But for humans, it's perfectly viable. Then we need a new classification system, someone suggested. Species-specific ratings. The idea gained traction. Heated discussion followed about implementation, standards, methodology. The debate stretched for hours. Finally, Vreth called for a vote. All in favor of reclassifying Vareth 9 as Class 7, with the designation human compatible, indicating high habitability for species with similar evolutionary backgrounds. Lights appeared throughout the chamber. Green for yes, red for no, yellow for abstention. Taemin watched as the votes were tallied. The result was overwhelming. 247 votes in favor, 38 against, 15 abstentions. The motion passes, Vreth announced. Vareth 9 is hereby reclassified as a Class 7 world, human-compatible designation. Furthermore, the Council formally recognizes the human colony's achievements and offers apologies for our initial skepticism. Cheers erupted from the human delegation. They'd done it. Officially, publicly, undeniably. But Vreth wasn't finished. I propose one additional measure, that the Council establish the Human Adaptability Index as a new standard for evaluating planets. This index will measure how suitable a world is for species with high environmental adaptability, such as humans. It will help us identify worlds that other species have dismissed, but might be viable for humanity. More discussion, but the vote passed easily. Humanity had proven themselves valuable enough that the galaxy was literally changing its standards to accommodate them. As the session ended, alien delegates approached Taemin. Some offered,